Hi everyone, Allie here from The Family Meeple, and welcome back today for the 10th and final installment in my 2023 Top 100 Games of All Time Countdown. We have made it to the final section, the top 10 best games, in my opinion, of all time. And if you haven't been following along, I would definitely encourage you to go back and check out the other 90 games that I have already talked about, all of which I think are fantastic games and well deserving of being on a top list and in lots of people's collections. You can also check out the introduction video where I talk a little bit about how I put this list together, as well as talk about how I put my list together in 2021, which I will be comparing to on this list if any of the games were on my list originally in 2021. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started with the ones that I'm sure everyone has been waiting for, my number 10 through 1. Starting us off today, coming in at number 10 is Disney Villainous. Disney Villainous is a 2018 game that was originally on my list, coming in at number 3 in 2021. So it has fallen about 7 places, but still remains in the top 10. Disney Villainous was designed by Prospero Hall and published by Ravensburger. Disney Villainous is one of the games that really pulled me into the hobby. I talked earlier on one of the lists about Carcassonne being the first sort of hobby board game that got me into board gaming, but I really didn't pick up steam until I picked up Disney Villainous in late 2019. This was the only game that was on my list in 2019 for the holidays, and it's the one thing that I really wanted for Christmas that year. Disney Villainous is a asymmetrical hand management game where each player will take on the roles of a different Disney villain. They will have a hand of cards and a realm board in front of them where they will take different actions and play the cards from their hand, trying to achieve their personal villain objective before any of the other players. It's a race game, and the first person to achieve their objective immediately wins. Disney Villainous plays from 2 to 6 players out of the box, although I would personally recommend not playing this game at anything higher than 2 to 3 players if any of the players are new, and certainly no more than 4 players even if everyone knows the game. The game can drag on very long with higher player counts, and I think you lose some of the enjoyment and the spirit when that happens, and people are just kind of constantly preventing you from achieving your objectives. It also has a solo mode or several different solo modes available on Board Game Geek. I've tried 2 of them, and both of them are enjoyable if you just want to get this game to the table and check out all of the different villains. The original base game box of Disney Villainous includes 6 of the classic Disney villains, my favorite of which is the one on the cover, Maleficent. But you also have several other classics in there, including Captain Hook, Jafar, Prince John, Ursula, and the Queen of Hearts. Since its original release, there have also been 5 additional expansions made for the game, which are standalone expansions. Each of those include 3 more Disney villains that you can play as, and you can play them with just the expansion box without having any of the other expansions or the base game, or you can mix and match. My personal favorite is Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove. There are a lot of people who don't care for Disney Villainous, but this is one that I will literally never turn down playing. And as soon as I can find someone who likes it as much as I do, I fully intend to do a Disney Villainous Championship and play through all of the different characters with them. It's one that my daughter Rory has just started playing, and it works really well as a 2-player game. But for now, I primarily have been playing this one solo with the BGG solo modes just to get that itch scratched and play my Disney villains. This is a nostalgic game for me as I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and all of these villains and these Disney franchise movies are familiar favorites of mine. So that is my Number 10, Disney Villainous. Number 9 is the third game from Alexander Pfister to make it on the list, and this is the highest one. It is Great Western Trail, specifically the second edition. Great Western Trail second edition was published in 2021. Like I said, it was designed by Alexander Pfister with artwork from Chris Quilliams, and it was published by Eggert Spiel. Great Western Trail is a fascinating game. It falls solidly into the medium-heavy range and is not one that I would recommend for new gamers. In Great Western Trail, you are going to be managing a hand of cattle cards as you travel with your little cowboy Meeple across this giant rondel that is the main game board. On your turn, you're going to be moving your Meeple across the game board in a specific path that goes from the beginning of the board all the way up to Kansas City. Depending on what you've unlocked on your personal player board, you'll be able to move a specific number of spaces or up to that many spaces. It's your job to decide how fast or slow you want to move along this rondel. Every time you reach the end of the rondel, you will deliver the cattle cards that are in your hand to Kansas City. And your objective when you reach Kansas City is to have a hand that is all unique cattle cards so that you can earn the highest amount of income and deliver them as far away from Kansas City as possible, with the ultimate goal that you can reach New York City. There are a lot of things going on in this game, including upgrades on your personal player board, adding staff or employees to your personal player board, funding and staffing train stations along the way so that you can deliver further and further out from Kansas City, and all kinds of different things, including objective cards for endgame scoring. I have primarily played this game solo, but I have also played it multiplayer with my mom, and it's one that I think she enjoyed, but it's sort of at the top end of the complexity level that she is really comfortable with. It's one that I'd like to try again with her now that she's played it once and see if she remembers it a little bit better. But it's one that I've mostly played solo, including that this was on one of my 10x5 solo challenges. So if you want to learn more about my thoughts on the solo game specifically, please check out my solo challenge playlist here on YouTube. Great Western Trail has just been so much fun. I have enjoyed every one of my plays of it, and it's one that I keep wanting to come back to and explore more and more. You never do the same thing in each of the games, particularly in the solo mode. You'll want to kind of specialize in one of the three areas and not try to do it all, because you simply can't do it all. And it plays different every time. It's so much fun. There's a lot of variability, and it's one that I just have not gotten tired of. I also love the Western theme aesthetic of the game. So that is my number 9, Great Western Trail. Number 8 is a new game to the list. This is Genotype, a Mendelian genetics game. Genotype was published by Genius Games in 2021. It was designed by John Covey, Paul Solomon, and Ian Zhang, with artwork from Tomas Bogus and Amelia Sales. Genotype is an interesting game because it started from a scientific background where you are taking on the role of monks who are looking at gene splicing and genetics using pea plants. It is a dice drafting and resource management game with worker placement as well. So the game plays out over a series of rounds, and in each round you'll play out specific phases. In the first phase, you're going to be placing out all of your workers and taking actions at some but not all of the locations. In the second round, you are going to be drafting gene dice from the gene pool, which are rolled on each round and manipulated during the worker placement phase as well. Once you've drafted your gene dice, then you'll be filling out traits on the pea plants that you specifically are researching on your player board. And then if you can complete pea plants, then you will be able to score those at the end of the game. In the fourth round, you're going to be able to upgrade your player board to add additional dice slots or additional slots to have more pea plants, gain helpers that will give you special abilities throughout the game, gain additional workers for the worker placement phase, and things like that. The game plays fairly quickly, and although it seems somewhat complex, it tends to be fairly easy to teach to new gamers who are already sort of in the hobby. I wouldn't consider this an introductory game. In fact, it's classified as a medium complexity game, but it's one that just looks beautiful on the table. I love the aesthetic of it. It's very sort of tans and creams and earthy tones combined with these bright pops of color from the gene dice. It just looks absolutely stunning. Genotype is a game that I've primarily played solo, and it was included on one of my 10x5 solo challenges, so you can learn more about the solo play on that video. I've also taught this game at the Dice Tower Retreat and played it at 4 players multiplayer, and it is fantastic in both solo and multiplayer. It's definitely one that I need to teach to some of my friends. It's a simple enough game that I think they would have a good time with it, and it's one that I think my mom would enjoy as well. It's not one that I would recommend for kids, but definitely for adults, sort of medium weight game, something to get into, slightly more complex games. Genotype is a fantastic option. So that is my number 8, Genotype. Number 7 is the most complex game on my list. This is The Gallerist from Vital Lacerda. The Gallerist was published in 2015. It features artwork from Ian O'Toole, and it was published by Eagle Gryphon Games. The Gallerist was not on my list in 2021, as I had not played it or owned it at that time. The Gallerist is yet another game that I have only played solo and was included on one of my 10x5 solo challenges. If you want more information about the solo specifically, definitely check out that video. Like I said, I have not played the Gallerist multiplayer, and the main reason for that is, like I said, this is the heaviest, most complex game in my collection, and there really isn't anyone here locally that would be willing or kind of ready really to dive into a game of this complexity. The nice thing, though, is that it does include a solo mode, which I have definitely enjoyed and is one of my favorite sort of worker placement action selection games. The Gallerist plays out over a number of rounds where you are going to be moving your pawn onto different locations. There are actually only 4 locations and 8 total actions that you can take throughout the entire game, which makes it sound like something that would be very simple to get into. But the tightness of the game, in that this is a Vital Lacerda design, you really can't waste any of your turns if you want to do well in the game. And particularly with the solo mode, there are 3 different complexities or difficulty levels, and I think I've only beaten the first of them. You really have to pay attention to the order in which you are taking your actions and the consequences of moving to different locations and how that impacts either the other solo player, or if you were playing multiplayer, how it impacts the other players in the game as you take those actions. The game timer is based on the number of tickets that have been used to enter the different gallery spaces. And once the tickets run out, you will have an interim scoring round for the first stack that runs out. And then when the second stack runs out, you will enter the final scoring for the game. Your goal is to have the most money that is obtained from your gallery by the end of the game, and that's how you'll win. There are a lot of intricate rules about how you will actually play the game and earn money, but essentially you are a gallery owner, so you are going to be going out and commissioning artwork from new artists and kind of getting them their start. And then you'll also be purchasing artwork from artists that are already discovered or already known. So you'll spend more for those, but they're already worth more to begin with. Then you'll spend time actually promoting the artists and hiring employees for your gallery. You'll go out and participate in auctions and different activities, and you will commission artwork and sell artwork as well. So it's a very thematic game, everything that you're doing makes sense within the setting and the theme of the game, which makes it one of the easier Vital Lacerda games to pick up from what I understand. This is only the second or the first that I played, but only one of 2 Vital Lacerda games that I have tried so far. And it's such an enjoyable game. It's a massive table hog, which some people don't like, but it looks fantastic on the table. All of the pieces and components are, top notch. It's from Eagle Gryphon Games, and it's one that I see staying in the collection for a long time and coming back out to the table regularly. So that is my number 7, The Gallerist. Number 6 is also a new game to the list. This is Coimbra. Coimbra is a 2018 game published by Eggertspiel. It was designed by Flaminia Brasini and Virginio Gigli with artwork from Chris Quilliams. This is a game that I originally had looked at and didn't pick up because it plays 2 to 4 out of the box, and it is a medium complexity game. It's not a simple sort of intro to the hobby game. And then I found that there was a solo mode on Board Game Geek that looked promising, and so I picked up a copy of the game and played the Board Game Geek solo mode for one of my 10x5 challenges. This is yet another game that I have only played solo, so this ranking is based just on a fan-made solo mode. I have a feeling that I would enjoy this game as much, if not more, when I get a chance to play it multiplayer as well. In Coimbra, you are going to be drafting both dice and cards and moving up on tracks, as well as traveling along the central board using your marker to go to different monasteries, I think is what they are. And then you'll also be commissioning voyages with your coins and soldiers for end game points. The game plays extremely quickly. You only have 3 rounds. So on the first phase of the round, you are going to draft dice from a pool of dice that gets rolled at the beginning. And then based on the dice that you've drafted, you will place them out into one of the locations on the board, which will allow you to in turn draft from that location in the next phase. And the pip value of the dice matters during the second phase because the higher the pip value, the more you're going to have to spend for the cards that you're drafting. If you are drafting a card and you're using a dice that has a value of 5, you will be able to draft the card first ahead of the other players who played lower values, but you have to pay 5 either coins or soldiers from your supply in order to pay for the card that you're drafting. When you draft the cards, you'll be earning a value for each of the different tracks. So if you draft an orange card, you'll be able to move up on the orange track. If you draft a purple card, you can move up on the purple track. And then in the third phase, you're actually going to earn income from the dice that you drafted. So if you used a purple dice to draft the card, then you'll actually earn the income from your purple track. So the higher you've moved up, the more income you're going to earn. The purple track actually allows you to move your pilgrim, I think is what they're called, around that monastery track in the center. The orange track will get you coins, and the other tracks will earn you other benefits as well. At the end of the income phase, you will have the option to fund one of the voyages, but this will mean spending gold coins or soldiers that you acquired during the income phase that you won't have when it comes time to draft cards on the next round. So you're spending your money at the end of the round and going into the next round with less income than you had to start with. You can typically only fund one voyage per round at the end of the round. And so although there's 6 cards out each game, which will vary depending on each game, you will not be able to fund all of them by the end of the game, but that is your end game scoring. So you will want to fund at least some of the voyages as you go through. At the end of the 3 rounds, you will add up your victory points for all of the different scoring objectives and where you're at on all of your tracks. You're also competing to see who can get the highest on each of the tracks with the other players, and you'll earn additional victory points for that as well. Coimbra is such a fun game. I just absolutely love the challenge of drafting the dice, then using them to draft the cards. The pip value matters for one of the rounds. The color matters for one of the other phases of the round. And it's just so much fun. Very enjoyable game. It's one that I would suggest you check out. Give it a try if you haven't. That is my number 6, Coimbra. Number 5 is also new to the list. I had not played this game in 2021. This is Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia. Euphoria was published by Stonemaier Games, designed by Jamie Stegmaier and Alan Stone, with artwork from Jackie Davis. It was originally published in 2013. Euphoria is a dice worker placement game with a dystopian future theme to it. And it is one of my absolute favorite games to play. I have mostly played this game solo, although I did recently get a chance to play it multiplayer at 5 players as well. It plays from 1 to 6 players if you have the expansion Ignorance is Bliss, which includes the Automa Factory solo mode in the expansion content. Euphoria is a race game, so your objective is to place 10 influence stars out on the board first. Whoever can do this wins. One of the primary ways that you're going to place these influence stars out onto the board is by contributing to the building of markets. And what you'll want to do is collect specific types of metal, I think they're called commodities, throughout different action like worker placement locations on the board. And then you'll place one of your dice workers by paying one of the metals to start building one of these markets. And if you're the first person to go there, you might have lost your dice for several turns because you can't pull it back until the market is completely constructed. And then anyone who has a dice there will get to place one of their stars out on the new market. And anyone who didn't will actually get a penalty from then on throughout the game until they go at a later point and actually contribute to that market to remove the penalty. The game will play out over a number of rounds depending on how long it takes for someone to reach 10 influence out on the board. There's also other ways to gain or add influence stars by, for example, reaching the end of your allegiance track for one of the factions that you select at the beginning of the game, or completing your ethical dilemma by continuing the dystopian society that you are living in. This is one that, like I said, I have primarily played solo, and it was included on one of my solo challenges, so you can find out more about the solo gameplay in one of my solo challenge videos. But I really enjoyed it multiplayer as well. I've played it at 5 players, and then I also played it at 2 players with my mom. And it's fun both ways. You can add the solo mode into lower player count games to increase the feel of the game and the player count to make it feel a little bit more like a higher player count game. But it's not completely necessary. I played it 2 and it worked just fine in my opinion. I just love the theme of Euphoria and the dice worker placement, the little bit of push your luck in that you start out with 2 workers and you can get up to 2 additional workers. But then when you pull your workers back from the board and you have to re-roll them, you'll be doing knowledge checks each time. And if you exceed the knowledge check value, then you actually lose one of your workers. Your workers have become too smart. They recognize that they're contributing towards this dystopian society and they run away and they don't work for you anymore. It is really a fun game in that it plays differently every time. There's a huge stack of these faction cards where each player will have a special ability based on which card they are using, and all different marketplaces that'll go out onto the board, so you don't know which ones are going to be there each time, and a lot of just variability and replayability in the game. This is my absolute favorite game from Stonemaier Games. You will not see anything else higher on the list. So spoiler alert, if you were waiting for any other games from Stonemaier, this is my favorite. It is Euphoria, coming in at number 5. All right, number 4 is another new game to the list. This is Praga Kaput Regni. Praga Kaput Regni is a 2020 game from Delicious Games and Rio Grande Games here in the States, designed by Vladimir Suchi with artwork from Milan Vevron. Praga Kaput Regni is a game that I have only played solo and was once again included on one of my 10x5 solo challenges, so you can hear a little bit more about it there as well. A high-level overview of Praga Kaput Regni is you are working to help to contribute to the building of the Hunger Wall, to the cathedral, and to the city of Prague. And you will be doing this through a action selection mechanism. So in the game, there is a wheel in the top corner of the board where you will take a small chit from one of the different locations, and it will give you one of two actions that you can take on your turn. You will decide which of the two actions you will take, and it will typically also give you a bonus as well, depending on which location you took it from. Then when you take your action, you'll be doing things like upgrading your actions that you take by drafting a tile, an upgrade tile, building the wall around your personal action board. You will be increasing your production of metal and gold. You will be trying to increase your knowledge track as well. You'll be trying to contribute to the building of the King Charles Bridge in the center. You'll be building out different locations in the city by adding tiles there as well. And you will be taking all of these actions in an effort to most efficiently achieve victory points. It is definitely a tight game, and there are so many different things that you can do on your turn. It's all about figuring out what the best possible combination is for that game and how to maximize each of your turns. The solo mode that's included in the box is just a beat your own score, and it plays very well. It's very smooth, very easy. They also have released from the publisher a kind of second solo mode option that comes with a small deck of, I think, 5 AI cards. There's no AI opponent from a scoring perspective. It's still a beat your own score, but it helps to sort of simulate a second player in the sense of they will actually be taking out action tokens from the wheel at specific locations that are a little bit less prescripted than just take out the one at the front. And then they will also be adding in different tiles to the city that you're building out and moving around in the city to help kind of influence the majorities when the markets get completely surrounded. So it adds in some of the game elements that were lost in the other solo mode. Praga Kaput Regni is such a fun game. I didn't know if it was one that I was really going to enjoy when I first picked it up, but I ended up loving it even more than I did Underwater Cities, which is also by Vladimir Suchy, and has really solidified my interest in Vladimir Suchy as a designer. And there are several other games from him that I have added to my collection since then that are not on the list because I have not played them yet, or I hadn't played them at the time that the list was created. So the next time that I make this list, don't be surprised if you see several more games from Vladimir Suchy on it. But for now, that is my number 4, Praga Kaput Regni. Number 3 is another new game to the list and another entry from Eagle Griffin Games. This is Rococo Deluxe Edition. The Deluxe Edition is a 2020 release designed by Matthias Kramer and Stefan Maltz and Luis Maltz with artwork from Ian O'Toole. Rococo Deluxe Edition is a absolutely stunning production, big, giant, grandiose table hog of a game that actually falls pretty solidly into the medium weight complexity range. It looks like a massively complex, huge game, but in actuality, when you play it, it is not. I have played Rococo both 2-player with my mom as well as primarily solo. It is another game that was on one of my 10x5 solo challenges. Rococo Deluxe Edition is a hand management and resource management game with a little bit of area majority as well for the end game scoring. So in Rococo, you will have a hand of cards that you will select at the beginning of each round. You will have a deck of cards that you have built throughout the game, and you will take all of the cards that are in your available stack. You will select 3 of them that you will use during the current round, and you will set them aside. Then you will take turns with the other players by playing one card on your turn and then taking an action out on the board. Each of the actions can be taken depending on which employee card you played from your hand. Some of the actions can only be completed if you played a gold master employee card for that turn, and some of them can be completed by any of the employee cards. You'll be doing things like hiring additional employees. You will be collecting bolts of fabric, lace, and thread in order to create garments. You'll be actually tailoring those garments and then either selling them or renting them out to people in the ballrooms, which is where the area majority comes in. You can fund decorations or musicians as well, which will give you in-game bonuses, income, and end-game scoring options. At the end of, I believe it's 6 or 7 rounds that you will play out, then you will look to see who has the majority in each of the different halls on the board from renting out garments, and you will score points for all of those. The player with the most points will be the winner. This game is absolutely beautiful. When I originally heard of it, I thought it was probably overproduced, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily untrue, but it is an absolutely fantastic game, very simple to get into and very enjoyable. If you are looking for something that is a little bit lighter for an area majority that doesn't include area control where you're fighting and kicking people in and out of different spaces that you can more easily plan for, Rococo is one that I would definitely recommend checking out. So that is my number 3, Rococo Deluxe Edition. Coming in at number 2 is another new game to the list. This is another game from Aporta Games. It is The Magnificent. The Magnificent is a 2019 game designed by Eilif Svensson and Christian Amundsen Osby with artwork from Martin Motet. The Magnificent is the first game that I tried from Aporta Games, and it still remains my favorite to this day. The Magnificent is a game that I have only played solo and have included on solo challenges in the past. So again, you can check out my videos for my overall thoughts, in-depth thoughts on The Magnificent as a solo game. The Magnificent is a medium complexity game that would be really good for people who are ready to kind of step up into the next level of complexity without increasing the rule set complexity of the game that they're playing. In The Magnificent, you will be playing over 3 rounds. In each round, you will have 4 turns. On your turn, you will take one of 3 actions. You can either travel and move a wagon around one of 3 different wheels in the center of the board, depending on the color of the dice that you draft, and collect gems. You can build, which allows you to build different tents on your personal player board, which are polyomino tiles. The color and shape will depend on the dice that you draft. Or you can perform. To perform, you will be still drafting dice, but the color of the dice will not matter. The tents that you have built on your individual player board will matter. And the dice value will matter because the higher the value of the dice, the more performances you can potentially put on. The Magnificent is an extremely tight efficiency puzzle that is one of my absolute favorite games to get out. You will be limited, like I said, to 12 total turns throughout the entire game, and your goal is to earn as many points as you possibly can. In the solo mode, the goal is 200 points, and I'm not entirely convinced that without the expansion that this is actually achievable, but it's certainly a lofty goal to attempt to achieve. The Magnificent has a very dark aesthetic, which I enjoy, but not everyone does. So if that doesn't seem like something you're into, that this might not be the game for you. In The Magnificent, you are going to be drafting dice, and the interesting thing is that you can draft dice from the center, and you will be looking at the value of the dice. The value of the dice is going to increase the strength of the action that you choose to go with it. And as you draft dice that match on future turns, you will actually add them together. So if the first turn I draft a purple dice of a value 4, then I will take an action using just that value 4. But if on my next turn I draft another purple dice with a value of 3, now I have a power of 7 to use on whichever action I'm taking. But at the end of each of the rounds, you have to pay for the dice that you've drafted, whichever of them is the highest value. You will have to pay that number of coins. If you can't pay coins, you're going to lose victory points instead. The Magnificent is a game that I just have never gotten tired of. I've played it quite a bit, and it's one that I always want to get back to the table. This is one that turned me on to Aporta games, and it's one of the main reasons that I have several other games from Aporta either on my wish list or coming in the future. So this is my number 2, The Magnificent. Okay, we have reached the end, my number 1 all-time favorite game. And if any of you have been following me on Instagram or any of my other social medias or have chatted with me in Discord, it will not be a surprise to you that my number 1 game of all time is Glenmore 2 Chronicles. Glenmore 2 Chronicles was published by Fun Tales Games. It was designed by Matthias Kramer with artwork from Jason Coates and Hendrik Noack. Glenmore 2 Chronicles was published in 2019. This is, in essence, a second edition of the original game Glenmore, which I have not played. Glenmore 2 Chronicles, however, is a re-implementation of the original, plus the addition of 8 modular expansions, which are called Chronicles. Glenmore 2 Chronicles was originally on my list in 2021, and it was number 1 at that time too, so it has not moved. This game has been my number 1 ever since I added it to the collection in 2020, and as of right now, I don't see it moving anywhere anytime soon. Glenmore 2 is basically my comfort game. It's the game that I always want to play, that I always want to get out. I don't have to read the rules. I can just throw it on the table, start a game, play it. It takes less than an hour, and it always is just so satisfying. In Glenmore 2 Chronicles, you will be building out a territory in front of you with square tiles. The way that you will draft the tiles is from a central board that has a rondel of tiles that you can select from. So on your turn, whoever is the furthest back on this rondel board will move their player marker forward to any of the tiles that are available. And literally any of the tiles. You could jump all the way to the very end and select that tile. However, you will always play player order whoever is furthest back. So if you jump really far ahead when you select your tile, then it may be a while before you get any more turns, and the other players will continue to get turns until they catch up with you. Once you select a tile, you will add it into your personal territory in front of you. There are some minor rules on placement. It primarily has to do with you have to continue your river through the center of your territory if it has a river on it, and you have to place next to a tile where your clansman is at. You have several clansmen that potentially are out in your territory, and you can't place a tile unless there is a clansman somewhere around it. The tile, when you place it, will have typically an ability that will activate when you place a tile in your territory, and then it will also activate every tile around it. So up to 8 other tiles could be activated when you place a tile into your territory. So you're wanting to plan out gaining resources, trading resources, moving your clanspeople around your territory so that you can optimize the amount of points that you are earning. The primary way that you will earn points is through trading tiles that you add to your territory, as well as through claiming spaces out on the clans board that you will be using as well. You will also earn points at the end of each of the 4 rounds in the game or phases in the game. When a stack of tiles runs out, an interim scoring phase will begin, and players will earn points based on how many they have collected of certain things like clanspeople that are in their home castle, landmark cards, whiskey barrels, and famous Scotsmen. And you will look at the person who has the fewest number of each of these items, and then you will look at how many you have in comparison to that. The wider the gap, the more points you'll make. So, for example, if someone has only 1 whiskey barrel and you have 6 of them, you will actually earn 8 points because you have 5 or more over what the other person has. So you'll want to pay attention to what the other players are doing so that you don't let them get too far ahead in any one of those different territories. 8 points is actually quite a bit to earn in the game, and you really don't want people earning those points throughout each of the scoring rounds. Once you get to the end of the game and you've built out your territory, players will also earn points for any leftover coins that they have, and the player with the smallest territory is the one that you will use to compare to, and everyone else who has a territory that is larger based on the total number of tiles that make up their territory will lose 3 points for every tile in their territory in excess of whoever has the fewest. So as you're gaining these tiles throughout the game, you're constantly looking around to see how many tiles are in everyone else's territory. Can I afford to keep growing my territory larger and larger, although the person next to me maybe is not growing theirs as fast as I am? So it's a big balancing act on growing your territory versus playing overbuild tiles that can go on the top versus grabbing the famous Scots people that don't go into your territory but allow you to go out onto the clans board and take different actions there. There's a lot of different things going on. This is a game that I have primarily played solo, but I have played it at 2 players as well, with my mom, with my friend, and I think that's it. I've mostly played it 2 players and solo. The solo mode came in the recent expansion called the Highland Games, and it was designed by the Automa Factory. And the best thing about the solo mode is that it can be played with all but one of the different chronicles that are included both in the base game and in the expansion. So I have played through all of the different chronicles, as well as some of the kind of bonus chronicles of the What Lurks Beneath for the Loch Ness Monster one. This is one that my mom also enjoys, and the last time that she visited, she asked to play this twice while she was here. So we played with 2 different chronicles while she was here, and we just had a blast. It is by far my favorite game of all time. I don't know that I will ever get tired of it. There's always something to add in with the chronicles to mix it up. And if I could only have one game in my collection, it would definitely be Glenmore 2 Chronicles. And that's why it is my number 1 game of all time. All right, well, that rounds out the list. I hope that you have enjoyed it and have followed along through hopefully all 100, but if not, maybe you just came and checked out these top 10 games of all time for me. And let me know down in the comments if there's any that you like. Are any of these your top 10 game of all time, top 1 game of all time? Have you played them? Do you like them? Is this your kind of weight complexity of games or not? You'll probably notice as we went through the list, the heaviest, most complex games in the list did end up at kind of the top third of the list. If you've been paying attention to any of the games on my shelf behind me and there's something that you didn't see me talk about, it's probably because I had not played it before this list was made. Some sort of honorable mentions of things that may appear on the list in the future would include Boone Lake, Messina 1347, Woodcraft, which I haven't played yet, but I've heard great things about. And I think Bot Factory is in there too in the background that you can see. I'm always trying new games. I love to try new games. So the list will, I'm sure, continuously be switching up. And I will try to publish one of these every year, maybe every 2 years. And hopefully you'll come back and check it out at that time. Until then, thanks so much again for following along. Continue subscribing, liking this video, following us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And until next time, have fun playing games with your family, your friends, and especially solo like I do. Until next time, have a great one. Bye.